I recently had the opportunity to interview a man named Christopher Dedeyan. Chris is a professional speaker, a peak performance expert, and he helps entrepreneurs, leaders, C-suite executives, and teams manage their stress, increase their productivity, and have more energy. He's got an incredible personality. He is charming, he's energetic, charismatic, and he was super fun to talk with, especially about the topic of performance and productivity. Now, at a young age, Chris built and ran his own successful real estate brokerage company. And during that time, Chris fell in love with habits and rituals that were helping him be a better performer, and it was helping his team as well and the people around him. And he realized that he could help so many more people by making a pivot in his entrepreneurial journey. Since then, Chris has become a keynote speaker and has spoken in front of thousands of people in classrooms, universities, companies, and professional associations. Now, what's interesting is that at the age of 8, Chris was diagnosed with dyslexia, which he's going to get into in just a minute. And growing up with that came a lot of hardships. But because of that, Chris developed the skills to actually overcome that and become a better person. Bottom line is that Chris is a great dude, and I really think you're going to enjoy this interview that we had together. So without further ado, sit back, relax, and get ready to take notes and listen to some awesome value. Let's dive in. Chris, how are you doing, my man?
I am great. Thank you for having me on the show. Really excited to have this conversation with you.
Real quick, how did you, just to start this off, like get into the position that you're in? You know, you were very successful in real estate and whatnot, and then just took your own venture. Can you just kind of give us a little bit of a backstory before we get fully into this?
Yes, absolutely, James. I would love to. Honestly, it happened out of fluke in a sense, but it was a guiding reason of being. Like, my life was preparing me for this even before I knew what the speaking world was, even though I didn't know anything about the coaching world. And how it happened, like you mentioned, I was a real estate broker in my early 20s to mid 20s, and I was succeeding quite well in the whatever success is called within society, the car, the money, so on and so forth. And granted, for all entrepreneurs out there, it took me several years to start succeeding as an entrepreneur and a broker. But once I was succeeding, one of my speech therapists that used to follow me in high school called me. So I'm dyslexic. For people who don't know what dyslexia is, it was learning disability that has to do with reading and writing. So she had called me to ask me a question about a real estate property she wanted to sell. And after a few minutes, she's like, "Chris, how's it going with you?" And I went on a rant, like, "Oh my God, it's going great. Successful, money, business, all of this fun stuff." And then she's like, "Wow, I'm the keynote speaker at this event put together by the Learning Disability Institute of Quebec. And I would love for you to come and share us your story of how you were a successful dyslexic entrepreneur." I'm like, "Absolutely, I would love to do that." That same evening, James, she sent me a email with the subject written in big caps, "Chris, I don't think you should do this speech because there's still a lot of people that have a negative misconception of what learning disabilities are and what dyslexia is. And you might lose some clients through that process, and you're new as an entrepreneur." Now, I knew she was coming from a place of love. She wanted to protect me so I won't lose potential clients. I wrote an email that same evening saying, "You know what, Bridget, I do believe I have to do this speech. I'll call you Monday to explain why." Monday rolls around, give her a call. And I'm like, "Listen, if I don't do this speech right now, I'm not helping the kids that are on the school benches right now. I'm not helping the next generation, and I'm not helping my future kids because it's something hereditary. I would be somebody fake. I'm not fake." I'm like, "I need to do this speech." And she's like, "Oh my God, absolutely. I'm on board. I just want it to come from you. I didn't want you to be forced to doing this." I'm like, "No, 100%. We have to do it. And if ever somebody doesn't want to work with me because I'm dyslexic, those are not clients I don't want to work with either." That being said, get ready for this speech. James, I've never done a speech in my life. She told me it's going to be about 200 people. Wow. Brother, I open the door, I look left and right, and I don't see 200 people. It's more like 1,000 people. At this point, my heart is just beating. Sweat is coming down my face. I'm like, what the heck did I get myself into? I'm sitting down, seeing like one professor, one PhD doctor after another going on stage and talking about all these great things. And I'm like, what the heck am I doing here? And then at the end, they're like, "Chris, can you come on stage and tell us your story?" And James, it was like this divine moment. Like I mentioned, I feel like my life has been preparing me for this exact moment. And when I was on stage giving that speech, I noticed that that's what I have to do for the rest of my life, which is communicate, give information, help others to live their greatest life, their greatest purpose. And that's through the vehicle of speaking and coaching and consulting and my programs that I do that at such a high level. So that's how I got into this industry, completely by fluke. But at the same time, the universe was preparing this without me knowing. Now looking back at it, just like Steve Jobs says, you can only connect the dots looking backwards, not forwards. That's exactly what happened. Looking back at it, I'm like, oh yeah, my life was preparing me for this without even me knowing, being a dyslexic student in the education system that we were given.
Wow, dude. Do you still struggle with like dyslexia? It's still a whole thing. So
yes,
it's just amazing because like I feel like people think, oh, you're like these high performers, they are flawless. It's like, dude, they have they sometimes have more problems than people who aren't as high of performers. It's just what do you think? I'm curious on the topic of that is like the separator, because like you're not the only person with dyslexia, but there's people who are far less successful than you are. Maybe there's people even more successful than you. What do you think is the separator between like high performers and people that are underachievers or underperformers, I guess?
Great question. One thing, habits and rituals. That's it. That's all. Everybody could try to lose weight and be in it for a week or two. But the people that are truly walking under 10% body fat and the body they want and the energy and the vitality they want, it's because they're consistent every single day because they put the proper habits and rituals. Anybody could work really hard and call 10, 20 people in one day and do their prospecting. But the people that make the millions out of that do it every single day in a repetitive way. That's the difference between somebody that is a high achieving individual towards somebody that is just going through life in a normal fashion. I'm not saying normal is bad. I'm just saying the difference, the dichotomy between somebody that's a high achiever towards the rest of the population.
I totally agree, man. Consistency is key. And that's like a huge thing that I do when I'm working with people is like, I work heavily in a calendar. I think that, for me personally, like time blocking everything, it seems like rigid, but without that structure, you don't have the discipline. And without the discipline, you don't get the freedom that you want, really.
James, I'm going to go on a little tangent here. There's a misconception about discipline. People think discipline takes, but discipline gives. I have about anywhere between 20 to 30 meetings per week. The only way I could structure it and still be the CEO of my business, have 8 employees, have like 20 plus coaching one-on-one clients, 1 to 2 original content per day on my socials is because everything's structured, everything is ordered. So it might be overwhelming in the beginning, but it's that structure that makes it that I have free time with my family in the evenings and the weekends, so on and so forth. So there's that misconception, that switch that has to happen, that discipline doesn't take. All it does is it gives.
So true. And yeah, with the structure, it's huge. What I recommend to everybody is I typically work with people, and I'm sure you do as well, with like building a career or their like profession with wealth building or whatever. I put such a big importance on relationships and their health as well. So we set goals, like SMART goals and health, wealth, and relationships. People don't really know how to shut off from work. And like you said, like being with your family, getting all this work done with 20 meetings or whatever every single like week, what do you do to break up? Like when you end your work day, what time do you end it? And then you go hang out with your family or your friends. Like, what do you kind of do to get in the mindset of family friends?
I love that question. And that is something I do at a high level because the only clientele at a very high level that I work at is C-suite executive, business owner, high-end entrepreneurs. I don't work with Honda Civics to make them into Ferraris. I work with Ferraris to make them into F1s. So these are people that are already very high achieving. But like you said, there is certain things that they could improve upon, so on and so forth. So how to go about it and how do I do it myself? First and foremost is clarity and awareness. Understand where you are throughout the process of your life. I'm a single dude working really hard in my business. Granted, open. Now I'm 32, open to potentially be in a relationship, to start a family, so on and so forth, things that are important and valuable for me in my value system, right? Now I know that I'm single, so my loving connection is less in regards to percentage of work. Now I'm very aware of that, but there is a balance. Balance is not 50-50. My balance could be, let's say 15% connection, love, family, and 85 right now in my business. But once I meet a girl, start a relationship, then I have to adjust certain things. So first and foremost is awareness. Second thing, I'm highly intentional and even intense in the activities that I do. If I'm working, all that matters to me is that work. If I'm working out, all that matters to me is that bar in front of me and the time that I'm trying to beat, or the competitor next to me, or myself. If I'm having a conversation with my mother, nothing else matters. I don't care if my clients are dropped. I don't care we're making X amount of money. I don't care X, Y, and Z. I'm in this conversation. If I'm doing this podcast right now, all I'm thinking about is James and how to bring massive value to our audience. It's that intentionality of that process. And once you're intentional about every activity, you succeed at a higher level. Now, you succeed with the proper habits and rituals. I wake up every single day at 4 a.m. I have a very specific morning routine, from meditating to setting my intentions to gratitude work to my stretch to creative time, then doing my workout, coming back, reading, cold shower, so on and so forth. And then at 8:30 is my first client, usually first meetings. And I have different things that I do throughout like whatever day it is of the week. I usually try to finish my work day anywhere between 6:30 to 7-ish as much as possible. Because if I wake up at 4 a.m., I go to bed in the wintertime anywhere between 7:30 to 8. And I want to leave anywhere between 30 minutes to an hour of like no electronic time, no blue light time. So time to unwind. So I need that time in between. So everything is structured. And then once I go towards one activity to another, I set the intention of how I want to show up, like mentioned. Granted, now if I'm doing this podcast with you and I have meetings, I have this, that, and the other, it's a different energy. It's my CEO energy. When I'm seeing my family, that's not the energy they want. They want the energy of Chris as the son, as the brother, as the uncle, so on and so forth. So I'm aware how to switch my energy before going into every single activity. When I'm prospecting to close a client, it's one thing. When I'm actually with a client that's on board and coaching them, it's another thing. When I'm preparing a speech, it's one thing, so on and so forth. So you guys kind of get the idea of how I approach it.
Yeah. So I'm kind of curious because I know Brendan Burchard has a really cool kind of little like practice. You set an intention before you go into something. Like you literally tell yourself. Is that what you do, or do you just kind of like internally know? Like, do you have some kind of little ritual?
100%. Throughout the day, when the day starts at 8:30 for me, all I'm doing is I'm putting out fires until the end of the day. Clients, emails, this, that, and the other. So in that morning ritual from 4 a.m. to let's say until I go to the gym at 5:45 a.m., all I'm doing at that period, there's a moment that I look at my agenda one by one and I set my intention even before starting the day. So if I'm like, oh, I have a podcast, oh, I have this many coaching clients, oh, I have this, that, and the other, then my reticular activating system, which is a part of your brain that is going to guide you towards the right direction, already knows what to do with that activity. I don't have a lot of time in between my meetings, not even a lot of time. I have zero time in between my meetings. I'm jumping from one thing to another. So I do it in the beginning of the day. And then I do those big ones when I'm leaving the work and going into a different environment, such as family, pleasure, my time, so on.
Yeah, I do something similar for myself and for clients as well. I totally recommend it because so we do like a lot of time blocking and whatnot, and say like it's work to family friends time or work to gym time. I found a really cool book called The Three Alarms. I forgot the name of the author, but basically what he says is like set 3 alarms in your health, wealth, and relationships. So pro athlete would be like your health one. And it's like before you go to the gym, a legitimate alarm goes off and it says pro athlete, or you can write whatever you want. Mine says pro athlete. I even go further and say like 3 main character traits in my alarm, just on my iPhone. And I have like a song that's like intense, it gets me in the mindset, but that helps me so much, like get in that mindset.
Yes.
So it goes off like 10 minutes before I go into the gym.
I want to add upon that. So what you're doing is a concept called anchoring. So you're anchoring in your neurologic systems what is actually need to happen with that activity. So once that alarm comes on and pro comes on, like pro athlete, everything is firing in your neural networks of like, hey, I'm a pro athlete. We have that same thing with other activities that do. Same thing for me. When I put on my gym clothes, my sneakers, I instantly feel it. My level of testosterone, my level of competitive, my aggressiveness goes up. When I put on my suit, when I'm doing my work, it's a completely different energy. When I start my day, I have a lamp on my home office and I turn on that lamp. Shiny, like a sun outside or not, I turn it on and that activates like, hey, this is work mode. And when I'm not working, it's off. So these are anchors that help you get into that proper mindset and methodology to do the work in itself.
Well, it's interesting because when I have that's an anchor for me. You don't use the alarms, you use like your suit, you can put that on and it helps you get in the identity. But that's what it's all about, is the identity. And I even have one for like when I hang out with my girlfriend, it says rock star boyfriend, and it says present, playful, and loving. And when I'm actually hanging out with her, I like internally, I've seen it so many times and heard it go off that I literally think, am I being present? Am I being playful? Am I being loving right now? And I literally, it helps me abide by them. So yeah, for whoever's listening, I highly recommend like developing some sort of anchor that you can use in your own life, but also for your business as well, to help you get in the right kind of mindset. I've been doing a lot of customer research. I'm always doing a lot of customer research. One of the biggest ones that people actually say is that they have struggled to maintain their focus on just a specific task and they get distracted really easily. It's like super common. So I'm kind of curious, like, what is your take on staying focused, eliminating distractions, etc.?
Bro, we could do like a 3-hour podcast just on that.
I know.
We can pack it until tomorrow
Try to
morning.
keep it
It's
like 5 minutes.
yeah, try to give it 5 minutes. I definitely am. I'm just saying how in depth we could go into this.
Oh,
This is
yeah.
like the things that I geek out on when it comes to brain science and so on.
Yeah.
First and foremost, I have to talk about the misconception and the misunderstanding of multitasking. Multitasking is one of the ideologies that is the most misunderstood in this world. Okay. Multitask is a term that's derived from computers because computers have more than one processors usually. You and me, James, as human beings, the people that are listening to this have one and it's our brain. So first and foremost, if you want to stay highly focused, you have to concentrate on one task at a time. That's it. That's all. You're going to be able to get in a state of flow so much easier. Second thing, you want to be able to do this task for a long enough period to get into that state of flow at a higher level. Now, for the people who don't know what the state of flow means, it's like when an athlete says, I'm in the zone, or a jazz musician says, I'm in the pocket, or a comedian says, I'm in that forever box. That moment of like, you feel like time passes, dilutes in a different way, slower or faster. You feel like you're so much more creative, you're more productive. That's a state of flow. So as entrepreneurs, we get tap into that. That's one thing you have to do, one thing at a time. Second thing you have to look at is you have to structure that work for a long period of time. If today I'm doing this podcast and I have coaching calls, that's all I should be doing. I should not have a bunch of other meetings. I should not be doing content creation. I should not be jumping here and there every 30 minutes. You don't give enough time for your, let's say in my regards, like Mondays is my coaching, for my coaching helmet to come on. Then Wednesdays is my content creation. You have to separate a certain time. So leave a significant enough amount of time to get into that zone for that one work. Put everything together in that regards. If you see that you're losing focus, it's because your brain is not sending enough resources to the task in hand because it's getting bored. Your brain gets bored. Your brain wants to get challenged. So if you're sitting down for X amount of time doing the work and you feel like it's not working, get up, go for a 5-minute walk, come back. That's why the Tabata concept worked good, which is like a 25-minute work for 5 minutes off. That's why sit-stand desks work very well. You're sitting down and then you're doing your work and you're like, oh, I feel a bit fidgety. Just by standing up, you challenge your brain differently. So then you start sending more resources for the task in hand. So these are a couple of tricks. Like I said, I could talk about it until tomorrow morning, but these are some of the ones that really help people focus at a high level for the task in hand and get great value out of it.
I'm curious too, about one of these, but setting like the Pomodoro technique is what it's called, which Pomodoro stands for tomato. I'm not going to get into that, but it's kind of interesting. But it's the 25 minutes on, 5 minutes off. You said like a Tabata. I do that every day.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I said Tabata.
Yeah.
I was legit talking about that with a client. That's why.
No, but a Tabata, I mean, I've never heard it, but it is the same thing. Like Tabata is 20 seconds on, 10 seconds off,
Yes,
so it is
a workout.
Still, it's totally a style of Tabata for sure. But yeah, the work sprints, like literally I see people say like, oh, have like this Pomodoro special timer. It's like, dude, literally just open up your phone, go to the timer and set a timer for 30 minutes, or 25. It's actually, science has shown anywhere from 25 to 52 minutes is actually, so I say to experiment, I like 30 minutes personally. It's not too long, not too short. And then I just stretch or do something like that. One thing that you did mention is doing one thing. And I think that is it. Actually, I know that it is one of the big things that people struggle with, because in my customer research, literally, that's one of the other top things is people say, I don't know what task that I should actually be prioritizing. Like, what's the one thing for them? So I want to hear your input on that because you stressed it. How do people find their one thing?
Great question. Go online and pull up the Eisenhower metric. So Eisenhower, obviously being a US president, essentially it's a metric with 4 quadrants, and each quadrant says one specific thing. So the first quadrant is important, urgent. So it's a task that's important and urgent. That means you have to do it right away. Then the second quadrant next to it, it's important, non-urgent. Okay. So that means it is something that has to be done, but it's not necessarily urgent for you to do it right now. So you could schedule it, right? So whatever you see, like how you see this email, like I don't need to reply to this right now. I could reply to it at the end of the day, tomorrow, whatever. Then the one under the first one, it's urgent, non-important. Now we're talking about non-important. We're not talking about the task is not, we're not talking about the actual work is not important. It's the task for you to do it is not important. What do we mean by this? This is something that you should be delegating. If you're talents within the business X, Y, and Z, and then you're doing something that's out of your talent, that's something you should be delegating, even though it's highly important. Let me give you an example. In my regard, like I said, I put out 1 to 2 original content per day on my socials with all of my business, Dedeyan Enterprises. from a YouTube video, from reels to blogs to newsletters, so on and so forth. Now, for me in the beginning, I used to edit my own YouTube videos, but that's not highly important for me to do, right? It is important for to get it out there, but it's not urgent in that regards, right? Now I get an editor, I need to be creating and I could delegate that. And the last one is not important, not urgent, something you should not do at all. Now, why am I saying this? You have to look at every single task you do throughout your day, categorize them in these 4 quadrants, and then you're able to understand and see what are your priorities within your tasks, within what you need to be doing within the business, what are certain things you could delegate, and what are certain things you could do later. People approach every single task without necessarily knowing what they're doing. They go with the shiny object syndrome. First thing that pops up, they do it, but it's not the most important, and it's not the one that's maybe the properly placed within the day, because certain cognitive tasks that are more challenging should be in the beginning of the day. Some that are less challenging should be in the evening. So these are things that you should have to be aware of, test it out, and then find your cadence to be the most productive within the task in hand.
You know what's interesting too, and that I've found with people, myself included actually, is that I am able to find or help other people find like that one thing. And then, like you said, it's that shiny object where they're like on course, but they slowly start to drift, because sometimes that one thing is really the most important thing you should be doing. But because it's so like consistent, it can actually feel like mundane. Like, is this actually working? Like creating content, for example, that's a long game. It's like the infinite game. It's something that never stops, like building an audience like that way. I had like one of my videos finally hit and I was getting like 5 views. This one video hit on how to like use your Google Calendar, and now it's at like 1.5 thousand views, and I'm literally like getting opt-ins every day because that one video. And then people found out about me, they subscribed to my channel, and then they found all these other videos that I've been making for so long. It was creating content was such a key thing for me in my own business, and then it literally hit because one of the videos hit, and now the videos are getting like at this time 40 views on average or so, just after that one video. It's pretty crazy. So
100%. The YouTube gods were there and everything was in line, but if you're not showing up, putting up the video out there, it's not going to work out. So yeah, 100%.
Yeah. I think people do.
I've been there.
Yeah, practice like the patience, with it as well. So people have asked in specifically like a team setting, people wanted to maximize their productivity in their team to give them more time off. What do you, in like your current experience, or that you've worked with teams or with a CEO that has a team, in terms of like leadership, what do you kind of do to make sure like the team is actually functioning at a full level? Again, I know this is a topic we could talk literally all day about.
So when it comes to leadership and teams, 100% things that I work on, like I said, with my executive clientele or with me, like in the beginning of COVID, I was a solopreneur. Now I'm blessed to have 8 colleagues and employees under Dedeyan Enterprises. The best way to kind of go about that to be the most productive as the leader, you have to communicate well and often. You have to repeat certain things. You have to be on the ball of like, hey, where's that process going? And you have to trust that the person that you've delegating it to, that they're doing the job, and you let their creativity take over. You don't want to be like that helicopter delegator, which I take this term from like helicopter parent, like when they're over there, kids like, oh my God, don't touch this, don't do. At a certain point, the kid has to kind of fall, do his thing, figure it out, right? Yeah. So you want to be there supporting them, but let them do their own thing, because the whole goal of bringing these people on board is for you to save time because they're doing their own righteousness in a great way. Not only that, you're delegating people that are usually better at the task that they're doing than you. Right? You wouldn't delegate somebody that they're doing this, they could do the same thing as you. That doesn't make sense. So you have to allow that for them. It takes a bit of time for that cadence. Another thing that I highly recommend, not only we spoke about putting systems and process within your life, but within your business is highly important. So it has to be extremely clear of where to go about to get the job, what's the deadlines, how to go about it. It has to be this like methodical cadence. So everybody knows where to go get that information. And if they don't know, they know who to connect. As a leader, you want to lead anywhere between at most 5 to 8 people, not more than that. Are you saying, Chris, that doesn't make sense? You could be a CEO of like hundreds of employees and all that stuff. Yes, but these people have under them, their direct subordinates are 5 to 8 people. And then those people have 5 to 8 people. And then those people have 5 to 8 people. You could really connect at that smaller level instead of one to the many. And then that ripple effect is so much more inducive for creativity and a direct response of everybody being felt heard and their voice being present and received within a company or an organization. So that's the way I go about it. Honestly, I've done a full video on my YouTube channel on how to delegate effectively, and I kind of talk about that as well as leadership. I suggest people to go into that because I dive into it a bit more on my channel at Christopher Dedeyan.
No, I think it's a way more efficient and effective way to actually lead, because like it's the
Yes.
whole thing about great leaders create more leaders. So you're working
Yes.
with those 5 to 8, and then they have 5 to 8 underneath them. So they are like in a position where they need to be more of a leader. So I really like that. That's awesome.
Yeah. And
Cool,
they feel
dude.
more involved too. It's not one person. As everybody has that little piece of the pie, it's their piece of the pie. So everybody's like actively engaged. So many times when I'm a leader and I ask my team to do something and I have an idea of what I want it to be or how to go about it, I don't tell them how to do it. I give them specific guidelines for them to figure out and then come back to me and tell me, hey, Chris, this is how I want to do it. Why is that? Because when they come and they present it to me, it's their idea. They've already bought in. If it's my idea and I'm telling them, it's harder for me to make them buy it in, to understand it, and so on. So you want it to be coming inwards towards outwards as a leader. And for that to happen, you have to encourage your teammates to take that role of a leadership within their position.
We could sit here and literally talk all day, but we're going to start wrapping it up here. You mentioned your YouTube channel. Is that like your main output, or where would you recommend people, indulge in your information, learn more about you, and connect with you?
Yeah. Thank you, James, for that. So essentially, yeah, my YouTube channel is definitely the place where you're going to get the most content, the most way that's breaking apart for peak performance, entrepreneurship, and personal growth. So you guys can definitely check that out. Once again, like I said, it's at Christopher Dedeyan. My family name is Dedeyan. You can go check out my Instagram as well, do a lot of content there. And if not, honestly, in all other social medias, I have a full-time team that helps me out with like posting everywhere. We have a blog, we have a newsletter. And if you're interested for me to come in, speak to your team, to your company, go to my website, or if you want one-on-one executive coaching, go to my website at dedeyanenterprises.com and send us a message, and we'll connect with you, see how we could collaborate together and really get you to live that best version of yourself, go to that next level and really become peak performing individuals within your business, your employees, or yourself.
I'll put links in the description for all of that too, so it's super easy to find. You've provided so much value here, and I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time out to be on the show. Closing thoughts that you have for someone that wants to be a better performer, maybe already doing very well, but what kind of final thoughts do you have for the listener?
First of all, James, thank you for having me. Definitely was fun, and we could have talked until tomorrow morning.
I know, right?
Number one thing I would tell people in any position you are, any part of the journey you are of your life, business, and all that, comes down to one word. It's clarity. Figure out who you are, figure out your strengths, your weaknesses, figure out what you want to do, figure out your values. That's the number one thing. You have to be clear on that. That is going to be your guiding light to see where you need to go next. But if you're not clear in what you're doing, what you're selling, what your product is, who you are, your strengths and weaknesses, it's going to be tough to really become high performing individuals. If you go to anybody that's like achieves and is a peak performing individual, talk to them. It is so clear. They're so connected with Mother Earth, the universe, their thoughts and all that. And that comes through clarity. And that takes time of refining the ideas, of searching yourself, and so on. So work on your clarity.
No, I can totally speak to that. I mean, I just real quick, I went through like a lot of stuff with my family, just watched my whole family basically fall apart. I found personal development at 17 and read The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. And it's so true, dude, because I was really insecure. I was like angry. I was depressed a lot. Just because I was around a bunch of violence growing up, and reading that book, I literally read it every day when I was 17 for like months. And it was programming my mind to notice my thoughts and have that awareness and the clarity of like, I want my life to be like this. I want to be more confident, and really like putting it down to the bare bones. Like clarity is huge, and awareness, like those are the things that are really going to move the needle, whether it seems like it or not. If that's like the one thing really right there, it's a long game, because it's been, years and years of working on myself like that. So cool, man. Well, links in the description. Check out Chris, go to his website, subscribe to his YouTube channel. Pleasure having you here, man. See you in the next one.
Thank you, James.